Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining our webinar today on ServiceNow and our platform iServer 365. So in our session today, myself and my colleague Reda Gadiri will be walking through the agenda. And I think if we were to, could we just move on to next slide, please, Reda? So to introduce myself, my name is Sean Cleary. I've been a senior sales consultant here at Orbus for about 8 or 9 years. I've worked with quite a few different architecture scenarios and actual establishing integrations with ServiceNow right across a variety of industries. And we also have my colleague Reda Gadiri, who is our innovation and product manager here at Orbus software, who will actually be able to show you the integration in a little bit more detail. And in our session today, what we'll do is we'll walk through a quick introduction to our product, iServer 365, a little bit of an understanding about where the roles, responsibilities for your architecture tool versus your ITSM tooling, what are the challenges and benefits, how can we establish that integration, both with structured integrations, but also more flexible options. A quick discussion on best practices, and then actually dive into the demonstration itself so you can see it in action. But when we're considering our platform, so our platform, iServer 365, is an enterprise architecture tool that supports a range of disciplines. So that includes enterprise architecture and all of the domains within that, whether you're looking at business, application, data, infrastructure, security, solution, strategic portfolio management, business process analysis, and governance, risk, and compliance. And I suppose the unique proposition about the platform is that we integrate natively with your Office 365 ecosystem. So that means for publishing and engagement perspective, you can use common platforms like SharePoint Online, Teams, but even your architects can use your standard productivity tools. So things like Visio, Excel, Word as well. And when we consider the type of information that iServer 365 manages. Could we just next slide, please, Rita? What we're looking at is different information that we can use to support your business and IT transformation. So this is starting over on the left, your strategies, your goals, your objectives, your capabilities, processes, services. So very much information that gives you the organizational context, but also data and information that may come from your ServiceNow instance as well, including your applications, your technologies, your CIs, and then product information. So what products are delivering changes on these elements of your architecture. And then you can see all of this information, the interdependencies between it in the various architecture contexts, but also from a decision analysis perspective, model and document your target states, and then communicate this information to the wider organization through a set of dashboards and roadmaps to help support the transformation efforts and also understand the execution and the impacts of that as well. So as we just move on into the next slide, I think when we're talking about enterprise architecture tooling and your ITSM tools, including ServiceNow, there's different roles and responsibilities that they typically have. So your ITSM tools, more commonly an operational tool that's leveraged within the organization that provides an excellent insight into like your current state technologies, the applications that are in use in the organizations, your CIs, your help desk, so things like incidents, problems, changes that are in flights. And this helps from various scenarios help your service management, your IT asset management, and also your operational performance. But your architecture tool has a slightly different perspective. So this helps provide I suppose, a strategic planning, management, and design capability to support your IT practice. So things like your strategies, your organization capabilities or business context, but also overlapping information with your CMDB, things like your applications, technologies, but also other areas as well, like data, projects, risks, controls. And this helps address a wide range of scenarios. So being able to use your CMDB to provide a feedstock for your solution architectures, be able to design your target states, enforce and make decisions around your standards management, road mapping, drive your integrated risk management perspective, but also provide a key information to help your strategic portfolio management, because you'll have that traceability all the way through from your current strategies, the organization capabilities, your systems, your applications that you have on the roadmap, and also your underlying assets and technologies that you currently have within the organization from the CMDB. And then as we go into our next slide, then I suppose, as we've touched on, this is a range of benefits, because having this integration helps solve the fact that this information is typically siloed. So you'll have more of your operational current state information at the lower level, like your IT assets, your CIs in your ServiceNow CMDB, your road mapping, your organization context in your architecture tool. So being able to marry those together, well, what that means is that it allows you to assess your changing IT portfolio and also react with that, with the changes within the organization as well, and look at that in the context of the capabilities, the process, and the organization context for which the IT department needs to support. The other factor is that with our integrations, right, having plug and play integrations are obviously very powerful, because in the real world, setting up integrations can be more complex and also have an overhead in being able to maintain that. So this is where having this out of the box integration with your asset or your CMDB really helps provide value. And then I suppose as we're going through this, I think, Retta, you have a good insight in terms of the predefined integration. So I'll hand over to you to give an overview of this approach.
Thanks very much, Sean, and thank you for the overview. Yes, so in terms of our offering here at Orbus Software, we provide a set of out-of-box integration that allow you to automate the data interchange between your ServiceNow instance as well as your i765 repository. So we classify this integration into two types. We have what we call predefined integrations that leverage best practice mappings between the CSDM, which is the common service data model of ServiceNow, and the equivalent data model that we provide in i765 to help you quick start and also leverage some best practices when it comes to the mapping. So these integrations include very popular tables, record types in ServiceNow, including business applications, including your software and software models, as well as your servers. And in addition to this, we also provide more flexible integrations to allow you to customize the mappings essentially between both worlds. And as you may, as we've seen as well, working with customers, a lot of organizations have customized their ServiceNow instance to make changes in terms of the fields or the definition of the entities, and would like as well to be able to use those when they reflect that information or part of that information into their EA tooling. So the flexible integrations are all about allowing you to virtually map any concepts you have in ServiceNow to the corresponding EA concepts you manage in i765 in both directions. So here we're talking about records and different ServiceNow tables that you can map to different types of objects in i765, as well as CI relationships when it comes to the dependencies between these different elements or records in ServiceNow and the corresponding relationships in i765 from an architectural perspective. Some of the popular tables and mappings we've seen being implemented in real life with working with several organizations that use i765 and ServiceNow include things like on the business layer, the capabilities that are, I think, part of the ServiceNow APM module, but of course the kind of key table and key elements that a lot of organizations try to synchronize and focus on first are business applications or application services that can also be mapped to the corresponding application concept in iServer, as well as the dependencies to other things, including data entities, capabilities, and on the technology side, either servers or software models. So this is just an kind of example and illustration of some of these best practice mappings that we share with our customers, and also help you that we provide, as well as templates to help you quick start your integration efforts using our out-of-box integrations. If we deep dive into maybe or look at or have a closer look at the application portfolio management example, this is typically how the mapping would look like based on the data that is maintained in an enterprise repository, enterprise architecture repository tools such as i765, and the equivalent, I would say, subset of APM data within the ServiceNow CMDB. So we're looking here at the applications and how they support business capabilities, understanding the information that is being processed by these applications. So understanding the data entities, or how we call them in i765, or the information objects, how they called in ServiceNow, as well as the supporting technologies. So it can be services, it can be hardware models or software models that support certain applications to understand basically the linkage between your infrastructure and your application portfolio, as well as the business context that capabilities provide. Before we dive into the demo, what I would like to do now is share some best practices with you when it comes to how to best set up the integration and achieve the maximum value through automated data ingestion. So yeah, so let's get started. So the first point that we want to focus on really, or when we start engaging with customers, is really to define the scope of what the integration looks like. So what are the recalls, or the the data sets you're looking to automate in terms of their the integration, and have you established a clear view of what the mappings are in terms of the locating the types of records in ServiceNow, locating the equivalent concept in your EA tool, as well as defining the different metadata, maybe as well the relationships that you want to include as part of that first of that first initial scope. So this is really important, because with this you can obviously define or better kind of target which information you want to retrieve from ServiceNow, or which information you want to as well sync back in ServiceNow in case you want to set up the bidirectional sync. The second recommendation we can make here is really when it comes to understanding how your, for example, let's say your application inventories is being managed within your organization, defining the system that is mastering that information versus the system that will be receiving updates from or regular updates in when it comes to changes of your inventory or portfolio. So here we're talking about defining the right directionality in terms of the in terms of the data interchange. So whether you want, for example, your applications to be mastered in the CMDB or in the EA repository, and then as part of these applications are identifying which fields are maybe being sourced from the CMDB, or versus which field and which metadata properties are being sourced from the EA repository, also maybe including some relationships that you also want to sync. So really try to understand the directionality of the integration. So is it an import from ServiceNow initially, or is it an export from the EA tool? Is it kind of also a mixed setup where you have certain fields being sourced in one system and other fields or being sourced in the other system? The third recommendation we really want to emphasize here on our is really about how we recommend to focus on the information that will add value to your EA efforts and to your EA tool implementation, that will help you demonstrate value to your stakeholders, and that will also help you reduce the overhead of manually maintaining the information. So when we look at data from ServiceNow, typically you have a lot of low-level details when it comes to operational performance or certain IT assets like applications or certain kind of tags and a categorization that makes a lot of sense in the ITSM world. However, it is not necessarily required for the strategic planning of your application portfolio. And remember that this is usually the use you have for your EA tool. So try to really identify the information that will help you, establish some categorization, maybe identify owners, cost, life cycle, and then start importing that information to really automate that kind of data collection and keep both systems in sync, so you have the same picture across the entire tool chain. Lastly, and this is, I think, something that Sean will share with me here. So it's really about when it comes to try to, when Sean was talking earlier about the roles and responsibilities of both tool sets, configuration items are not necessarily a part of the EA world. So don't try to use your EA repository as a CMDB or containing low-level information about infrastructure components and configuration items, but try to aggregate or really focus on high-level information. So if you want to go down to the technology level, I think including things like software models and hardware models, maybe things like servers for your on-prem application is useful in the EA tool, but not necessarily these granular level configuration items that really belong and better mastered in a tool like ServiceNow, which is the kind of also a key area that they specialize in.
Absolutely, and I think, yeah, Reda, I think we both agree that would be, I suppose that would be one of the common mistakes that we would see when somebody is setting up this type of integration as well. Would you see that there's any other types of mistakes that organizations would make in terms of that, establishing that integration, or would you say this is probably the most common?
Yeah, so when it comes to really the efforts involved in setting up the integration, I think another one that I would mention here is really engaging with the ServiceNow folks within your organization. So the teams that look at the IT operations or your IT service management teams, probably your ServiceNow SMEs and administrators, to really kind of present your the bigger picture when it comes to how you look into use an EA tool for the strategic planning piece, and how you also, to make that strategic planning piece successful, require data that is mastered in the CMDB, so you where you can articulate the value proposition and as well effectively engage with the responsible owners within the organization for ServiceNow, and also so they can provide you with the right access to the system and also the right kind of tips and tricks when it comes to locating the data. So understanding where the tables, which tables are used to capture certain information. Are they custom? Are they out of the box? Help you as well with the mapping. So I think it's a team's effort. It's not just within the remit of the EA team, but it's really about engaging your IT operations folks as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I think I definitely agree with with that, and I don't think you'd find too many people that would argue with you there. Um, I think you've also raised a good point as well, because I think to add to that, I think one of the first steps, or the primary first steps in setting up the integration, is more so the so what, and focusing on maybe the, what are the immediate outcomes that the integration can immediately contribute to. And I suppose, what in your experience would you see as like the most immediate value adds that establishing that integration can bring?
Yeah, really. So for me, the first kind of outcome or benefit we can see is really achieving that transparency over your kind of IT landscape, understanding how your applications support the business, and being able to share these deliverables you typically create in i765 with your business and IT community. So that would be very that's a kind of um, very powerful way of demonstrating the value of such integration. So you can understand maybe your cloud footprint across the landscape, understanding your areas of cost, maybe where you can as well start doing some analysis around rationalization, functional redundancy, but really try to align or have that kind of alignment view between business and IT when it comes to your application portfolio.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that's also another important thing, is that in the real world, no data source is absolutely perfect as well. So when you have that clear understanding of the outcomes and the views that you may wish to deliver, having
Mhm.
having an understanding of that data that resides in ServiceNow, but also identifying maybe where the gaps are, and being able to socialize that outside of outside of that, maybe the operation world, into like the wider business and community
Yeah,
as well, helps really close the gaps there as well.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I think with that there is a big element of also driving a higher data quality and ensuring that data remains accurate to support that kind of the decision making and the communication or using these powerful views and dashboards as a way of communicating the current state of the portfolio.
Mhm.
Cool. So let's now move on to the demo part, so we can actually show you the integration in action and showcase some of the capabilities we've presented so far. So with i765, you have access to the Solutions Hub, which is a marketplace or a store for the different out-of-box integrations that Orbus software provides as part of the i765 offering. And within this catalog, we can find various solutions, including integrations, but also things like reports, assessment toolkits, and other integrations with collaboration tools such as SharePoint and Teams. But let's have a look at the ServiceNow integration to see the different options that you have available. So typically when we talk about ServiceNow integration, as I mentioned before, we distinguish between the predefined integration, so the ones that are based on the best practice mapping between targeted ServiceNow tables and corresponding concepts in the EA tool, and as well the more flexible integrations that allow you to locate any types of records in ServiceNow, import them into i7, locate any relationships from ServiceNow and replicate them in i765, or as well the other way around, so being able to export any types of entities in i765, so ranging from applications to technologies, etc., back into ServiceNow, including as well their relationships and dependencies you design and model within the EA tool. So I will deep dive into one of them here and show you some of the considerations for setup. So the idea is all these integrations are out of the box, even the predefined ones, even the flexible ones. So we provide you with this experience to simply activate and run these solutions using a wizard, including also some documentation to help you, to guide you during the setup. So we have the publish and note section that contains all the different functionality, system requirements as well when it comes to permissions on the ServiceNow side, as well as a walkthrough of how you can set up the integration simply using your ServiceNow account, as well as the i7-365 API. Here I will edit the solution to show you how you set it up and how the mappings actually work. So let's have a look at that. Cool. So what we have on the screen here is the solution configuration wizard. So we have 3 different tabs, an ServiceNow settings tab where we can locate, for this case, for the import from ServiceNow, the table that we want to import information from. So this is effectively a drop down looking at all the available tables you have in ServiceNow. So whether they're out of the box or custom tables that your organization may have created. Then you have as well another field where you can input your ServiceNow filter query. So this allows you to locate specific scope of records that you want to actually include in the integration, because sometimes organizations focus on a subset of records in a table. Let's say here a subset of applications or active applications that are only in production, for example. So this is leveraging the ServiceNow filter syntax. So it's just a matter of copy and pasting the filters from ServiceNow into this field. Then in the i7-365 settings, you simply select where you want to import the data. So that's what we call an i7-365 model. So think about this being a workspace, and which concept do you want to use to map your data from ServiceNow. So here we selected the business application table in ServiceNow. So the corresponding concept in the EA data model would be an application component like this. But obviously this is also flexible, so you can map it to virtually any of the concepts or object types you create in i7-365. Then in the mapping section, we define the field mappings between the fields you have available in ServiceNow and the corresponding attributes or relationships we have in i7-365. So first, let's start with the field that is used to locate the ServiceNow records in a unique fashion. So that's a ServiceNow identifier field you'll have in i7-365 to contain the GUID of these ServiceNow records. So for further updates, these objects or records will be identified using the value of that field. And then simply here you have this field mapping section where you can simply select the field from ServiceNow. So let's say here we want to map the name of the record to the corresponding field in i7, which is the name. We want to do the same for description. IT owner as well. We want to import the IT owner into the default owner field we have in i7-365. For the vendor maybe as well, we map in that. And when it comes to things like relationships, so in ServiceNow you have this concept of an application category, so that you can also map to a corresponding logical application component or an application category as a relationship in your EA data model. And this is as well quite flexible. So if I wanted to add, let's say here, a support to, let's say, if I had, let's say, let me search for business process or business unit that owns, for example, the application, I can map it here to the corresponding concept. So that would be, in this case, an organization unit. And then I can choose the relationship here to say organization use application. So this will allow us to import as well that information as a relationship in the repository. And you can add as many of these mappings as you need. You can also maintain them, like modify them going forward, and also extend them as you progress or as you want to kind of enrich the information you capture in the EA tool. When it comes to setting up the integration, you have different options. So you have the integration schedule here that you can set up, which is very flexible. So you can set up an integration that runs, several, every day, as well several times a day using the hourly like frequency, or maybe several times a week, where you can, for example, set up the integration to run every like 3 days a week, and define when do you want this to start, when do you want this to finish, etc. So it's basically a one-time operation. You set up the integrations, and then it will run on a schedule. You will also receive logs when it comes to the details of the imports and understanding basically the imports that were processed, the ones that succeeded or failed due to any other reason that might occur, like an exception in the mappings or things like that. In addition to this, what we also provide is integrations that are more like event-based. So what I will show you here is this other integration solution that looks at the business application table and detects any changes happening there. So every time a new application is created or updated in the business application table, this will automatically synchronize with i765. So let's have a look then at our application table in ServiceNow. So this is the business application table we're looking at. And here, for example, if I create a new application, let's say we're using GoToWebinar for our webinar today. So let's just call it GoToWebinar and populate certain fields. So application type, this is off the shelf. Keep this cloud. Description maybe. Okay, maybe also populate the application category as it is mandatory. So let's select customer care and define as well an owner here, and simply submit this application. So simply just created a new entry in our ServiceNow business application table, and now we can actually go into i765. So here we're looking at an application portfolio view, which is one of the key kind of outputs that you can expect very quickly to create and consolidate into i765, providing the different metadata information about applications, the deployment model, the life cycle, the vendor, etc., as well as some cost information. So here we'll look at for the application we just created, and you'll see here that it is automatically created in i765. We can look at the timestamp information here. So I just created 1 minute ago. We have all these informations that we've mapped. So the ID, the deployment model, the owner, etc. And I can also from here access the details page of this recording service now using that reference link, which is an easy way to access more information about the ServiceNow record. All right, so now let's have a look at more like what are the different outputs and deliverables you can expect from a well-aligned EA practice with your ITSM discipline within your organization when it comes as well to strategic planning.
Great, thank you, Retta. So I believe what we have here is just one of the outputs that you can achieve by combining your ITSM information along with your enterprise architecture view. And this allows you to create different perspectives, lenses, so that you can communicate not just to the IT team, but also right across the business. So we can see exactly search and understand what is our application portfolio, or understand our cloud migration strategy. But if we were to drill into what our investment and retirement candidates, what you'll see is on the left-hand side a view of our capabilities that we have, and in the center we've got a view of our applications. And these applications are scored based on the business fit, so how they're aligned to the business needs of the organization, but also technical fit, so how easy they are to support, for example. This is taken and aligned to the Gartner time approach. So we can have a view of our applications, that's how they support the organization, align those, understand where we might have duplication, make decisions based on that. We can click into the rationalization plan up in the top right here, and understand, okay, how is this going to change our spend, our portfolio over time, or based on our rationalization decisions around those as well. And then when we actually look at any of these applications, and if we were to drill into the details that support them in a bit more detail, we can actually see that for each of these applications, for those, what we can see is a summary view of all of that contextual information. So we can see the outputs of the assessment. We can see the complexity, so how many integrations it has, but also what business capabilities it supports. But crucially, we can also see the technologies that support it, the CIs, and this can be driven from your CMDB, for example. And we're also rolling up on the top right. We can see this technology obsolescence risk. So based on information from your CMDB, we can understand things like maybe life cycle, versions, etc. of these technologies, and then what we can also understand in our EA world, right? What are standard and non-standard. So this allows us to understand the technology obsolescence risk, again, rolling that up against the applications, and also in turn against the business capabilities as well. Or we can see in this view, we've got a breakdown of our capabilities, our applications, and the applications are sorted and scored based on our application lifecycle, but we've also overlaid upon them the technology obsolescence risk, or even other factors like data impacts, etc., as well. We're on here, so we can see for those particular systems what the technology obsolescence risk is, what applications are responsible for processing sensitive information, and where beyond the risks due to the technologies that are enabling these applications, where we've identified risks here as part of our architecture practice or security practice, or also even synchronized from risk platforms, so platforms such as OneTrust as well, and being able to see that in this consolidated view so that we can make smart decisions on the systems that we wish to support, and even prioritize investment, not just at the application level, but also at our technology levels as well. And this is just a snapshot of some of the outputs that you can get to by combining these two repository sources as well. And I think I'm conscious of the time, but there's a huge amount of views that we can that we can show here as well. So maybe as part of the next section, what we'll do is we just have a quick wrap up, and then we'll open the floor to any questions from folks on the line as well.
Thank you, Sean. So let's recap. Really, what we see here in terms of aligning your EA efforts with your ITSM efforts is really to have a kind of that collaborative approach for better planning and strategic outlook when it comes to your IT estate. What tools like I-765 are really strong at is the ability for you to carry out initiatives like rationalization, managing standards, as well as designing target states and through new solution architectures. ServiceNow data is more about ServiceNow there is more about providing the as-is view of the landscape, as well as providing additional data points when it comes to operational performance of your application. So the number of incidents, as well as the categorization that you have in the CMDB with things like owners, categories of applications, organization only units that own certain assets, etc., that are key or kind of a foundation for conducting all different types of EA assessment, like what Sean showed around the time analysis, and to provide that more to get to that level where you have insights to share with your business that you can then make decisions on, and then act, plan plan roadmaps and initiatives to to act on those decisions.
Great, thank you very much, Retta. So I think let's just delve into, I think we probably have a number of questions.
Yeah.
So I think actually this one is for you, probably more so for you, Rada. Are these example mappings in the structured way? Are they the only recommended approaches? Because I think there's a few questions that were querying the mappings. So I'll pass that one to you, Rada.
Yeah, so the idea behind the mappings is really to share some examples and illustrations to how things typically mapped. However, obviously, it is subject to modification. So as I showed before, with the flexible integrations, you are able to virtually map any types of records in ServiceNow to the corresponding concepts in i765. And we typically help our customers as well to define the best mappings that will work for them, depending on their kind of modeling guidelines, or how information is also governed in the EA repository. So yeah, think about these mappings as like starting points or templates that you can start with initially, and then extend and modify to tailor to your specific organization needs.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Red. And I think that's a great point, because in my experience of seeing that sometimes information gets classified differently in ServiceNow instances, or any CMDB as well, and it may wish to be used in a different context and different architecture standard and approach and modeling context as well. So having that flexibility is a key benefit, I think, there as well. I think also another question, I think you indirectly answered it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Does this integration work with any of the ServiceNow tables, or is it just specifically for the CMDB tables?
Yes, good question. So again, here, the integrations we have leverage the ServiceNow API, and that means that we use the table API that ServiceNow provides to be able to locate any table within your ServiceNow instance. So beyond what you typically have in the ServiceNow CMDB area, or even the APM area. So we even have customers using tables like contracts to import licenses information into i765.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you, Greta. And I think another question, I think this is probably more for me, but how is the ServiceNow integration licensed? So the licensing for iServer 365, with each tier you have a certain number of integrations that you can select. So you simply select ServiceNow as one of those integrations that you would like to use out of the box, and then you would have access to all of the integrations options with ServiceNow that we discussed today, and actually much more because we just touched on a subset of those as well.
Yeah, so the idea is once you kind of choose which integration you want to use as part of your i765 subscription, you can enable as many of the solutions that we showed before and configure as many import and export type as needed. So if you needed to synchronize, let's say, applications and technologies, and also, let's say, contracts information, you'll be able to do that as well on a self-service in a self-service manner.
Great, thank you, Reda. I think that we're just slightly over our allotted time, so I think that just brings us to a conclusion. We'll definitely follow up on any additional questions that there are posted as well. But I think from both myself and Reda, would like to thank everybody for attending the session today. Really appreciate it, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.